He thought he was anonymous. The blockchain proved otherwise. For over a decade, a shadow hung over the digital world. A service known as Bitcoin Fog operated in the darkest corners of the internet, a phantom laundrette for the cryptocurrency age. It was a mixer, a tool designed to obscure the origins of Bitcoin, making illicit funds untraceable. From 2011 to 2021, Bitcoin Fog allegedly processed over 1.2 million Bitcoin worth, an estimated $400 million at the time of the transactions. This digital vortex became the preferred cleansing service for a global network of criminals. Its servers hummed with the proceeds of darknet drug markets, the ransoms from crippling cyber attacks, and the profits from identity theft. For 10 long years, the operator of this sophisticated scheme remained a ghost, a legend in the underworld, known only by the digital breadcrumbs he chose to leave behind. He was a master of misdirection, a pioneer of crypto anonymity. His name, the world would later learn, was Roman Sterlingov. And his downfall would serve as a stark reminder that in the world of the blockchain, anonymity is not a guarantee, is merely an illusion waiting to be shattered. The story of Bitcoin Fog is the story of the dark side of the digital currency revolution. Launched in late 2011, it was one of the very first Bitcoin mixing services, a novel concept at a time when Bitcoin itself was still an obscure curiosity for most of the world. The premise was simple, yet ingenious. Users would send their dirty Bitcoin to a Bitcoin Fog address. The service would then pool these funds with deposits from countless other users, chop them into smaller, randomized amounts, and send them through a complex series of intermediate transactions. Finally, clean Bitcoin, with no discernible link to the original deposit, will be sent back to a new address specified by the user. For a fee of 2 to 2.5%, Bitcoin Fog offered a digital clean slate. This service quickly became indispensable for the burgeoning darknet economy. The infamous Silk Road, the original online bazaar for illegal narcotics, was a major client. As law enforcement agencies shut down one darknet market after another, from Alphabet to Agora, the criminals simply migrated, and their currency washed through Bitcoin Fog, flowed with them. The mixer became a critical piece of infrastructure for the digital underworld, facilitating a torrent of illegal activity. Funds stolen from cryptocurrency exchanges, payments for child exploitation materials, and, most devastatingly, ransoms from ransomware attacks that crippled hospitals and corporations all were funneled through Sterlingov's creation. He wasn't just running a service, he was enabling a global criminal ecosystem, providing the financial plumbing that allowed it to thrive in the shadows. All while believing he was perfectly insulated from the consequences hidden behind layers of encryption and digital smoke. For years, that belief held true. Law enforcement agencies knew of Bitcoin Fog, but its operator was a phantom. The investigation to unmask this ghost would require a new breed of detective, one fluent in the language of the blockchain. It fell to a specialized team, a joint task force led by Special Agent Chris Jenshevsky of the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation IRSCI Cybercrimes Unit, working alongside the FBI. They faced a monumental task: to untangle a decade's worth of deliberately obfuscated transactions on a public ledger designed to be pseudonymous. The blockchain, a distributed, unchangeable record of every Bitcoin transaction ever made, was both the crime scene and the evidence locker. The challenge was that while the transactions were public, the identities behind the wallet addresses were not. It was like trying to solve a murder by analyzing the movement of millions of unmarked cars on a global road network. The investigators began their work not by looking forward, but by looking back. They started with known criminal transactions funds, seized from darknet markets like the Silk Road. Painstakingly, they traced these funds as they flowed into the Bitcoin Fog mixer. This was the entry point. The real work began in tracing the exit. Using advanced blockchain analysis software, they began to perform what's known as cluster analysis. The software scours the blockchain for patterns, linking different Bitcoin addresses together when it detects evidence that they are likely controlled by the same entity. The investigators fed the system every piece of data they had, every transaction connected to Bitcoin Fog, creating a massive, interconnected web of financial activity. They followed the money out of the mixer, tracking it as it was consolidated into new wallets. The breakthrough came from a single, seemingly insignificant transaction from years prior. Deep within the blockchain's history, investigators found a transaction from 2011 where a small amount of Bitcoin was used to set up the Bitcoin Fog domain name. It was a seed, a tiny digital fingerprint left before the empire was built. By tracing the origin of that specific Bitcoin, they unraveled a thread. They followed it back to an early account on a now-defunct cryptocurrency exchange. The account holder's name was Roman Sterlingov, but this was just a name. They needed to connect this identity to the ongoing operation of Bitcoin Fog. The team began to cross-reference their blockchain analysis with other data sources. They pulled IP logs, cloud server data, and financial records. A clear pattern began to emerge. The same cluster of Bitcoin addresses that had funded the initial setup of Bitcoin Fog were also being used to collect the service's profits. The web of evidence grew denser. Investigators discovered that Sterlingov had used the same online accounts for both his personal life and his criminal enterprise. An account used to manage Bitcoin Fog's infrastructure was linked to the same Google account that Sterlingov used for his personal calendar and cloud storage. Inside that Google account, agents found a treasure trove: notes on how to run the mixer, spreadsheets tracking its profits, and even the private keys to the very cryptocurrency wallets they had identified through their blockchain analysis. It was the digital equivalent of a killer leaving his signed confession at the crime scene. Sterlingov, the supposed master of anonymity, had made a classic mistake. He had mixed his worlds. On April 27, 2021, Roman Sterlingov, a dual citizen of Sweden and Russia, landed at Los Angeles International Airport. He was not a tech mogul or a tourist. He was, according to the U.S. government, the architect of a 10-year criminal conspiracy. As he stepped into the terminal, federal agents were waiting. The ghost of Bitcoin Fog had finally been given a face. The case of Roman Sterlingov and Bitcoin Fog is more than just another cybercrime arrest. It represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of privacy and permanence in the digital age. For years, the core promise of cryptocurrency mixers was that they could break the chain of evidence, creating a permanent dead end for investigators. Sterlingov built his empire on this promise. He believed that the complexity of his system and the sheer volume of transactions would create a fog so thick it could never be penetrated. He was wrong. What he failed to appreciate was the true nature of the blockchain. It is not a tool for forgetting. It is a tool for perfect memory. Every single transaction, every fractional coin sent from one address to another, is recorded forever on an immutable public ledger. At the time of the transaction, the data may seem meaningless, a random string of characters. But it is not gone. It is simply waiting. The investigation that brought down Bitcoin Fog demonstrates that this data is a latent fingerprint. With enough time, enough processing power, and enough correlating information from other sources, the anonymous addresses can be de-anonymized. The patterns become visible. The connections are made. What seemed like a secure wall of privacy in 2011 becomes a transparent window. A decade later, as analytical tools grow more sophisticated and more real-world data points, sex change records, IP logs, merchant data become available to connect to the blockchain's history. The blockchain doesn't forget, just waits for enough data to tell the truth. It's a patient witness, one whose testimony only grows stronger and clearer over time. Roman Sterlingov thought he was operating in the dark, but in reality, he was conducting his entire business under the unblinking eye of a permanent public record. He was anonymous only for as long as no one had found the right key to unlock his identity. The IRS, CI, and the FBI simply spent a decade forging that key. The fog has lifted, and the message to those who believe they can hide their illicit activities on the blockchain is now crystal clear. You are not invisible. You're simply not yet identified. The chain is always watching, and eventually it tells all its secrets.